Shit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week where I throw a little chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random episode. My name is the Dead Man, and today's episode is the next Star Trek: The Next Generation, season 6, episode 7, Rascals. And so it starts off, there's a shuttle in the distance, and Captain Picard is doing a captain's log where he talks about how Guinan, Ro, Keiko, and himself are on their way back from some planet. I guess they were on shore leave. I forget what he says, but they were... Picard was doing some archaeological stuff, and then Guinan was doing her own thing. Ro, I guess, was kind of hanging out with Guinan. They seem to have like a back and forth going on, and there's a planet where there's a scientific survey team. They are in trouble, and so the Enterprise needs to go rescue them. So Picard is is piloting the shuttle, and when they encounter some sort of energy field, so there's some sort of... I don't know how often that happens on TNG. I know in Voyager it happens a lot. Those guys needed a thesaurus, I'm guessing. But anyway, O'Brien is the shuttle is being damaged, so they have to beam them onto the ship. So O'Brien's at what I'm guessing is transporter room 3. That's where he's usually stationed. And he's beaming them on, and when he beams them on board, they're now little kids. So Picard is like a 12-year-old boy. Rose, like, I think she's like 9 or 10. Keiko's like 10. And Guinan's like 9 or 10, or maybe 11. I don't know. Picard's like the oldest. And so so that's the teaser. And then so they're in sick bay, and Crusher's like examining them, and she says that that they've regressed in age, but they still have the same intelligence that they had when they left. So, or from before the accident. So Picard is basically, telling them, or he's heading back to the bridge and telling them that, and Dr. Crusher is like, wait, I need to do more studies, and he orders Ro and the rest to stay behind so that Crusher can do more studies. So then Picard enters the bridge, and he wants to put like a probe or a buoy or some kind of something to study the energy field that they ran into. Like maybe, I think it's a warning buoy or something, because they have to head to this planet. And he tells Worf to send one out, and Worf just kind of looks at him funny, and Riker's with him, and Picard notes that he realizes that it's kind of awkward situation, but he assures them that he's still the same Picard from before. And Worf looks at Riker, and Riker, nods okay. So Worf sends out the buoy, And then Crusher comes to the bridge and wants to talk to him privately in his ready room. So she talks to Picard about the situation, and she says that, and he again insists that he's the same Picard from before, and she says, well, this may be the first phase in what could be, something long term, we don't know, and that your mind could start to regress. And he says, well, you said that it's not happening right now. And she kind of reminds him, it's like, what do you think you should do? Because he's asking if she's basically asking him to step down as captain. And she's like, well, I don't want to have to force it, but it's kind of a weird situation. And he or she asked him, what do you think you would do in this? What do you think you should do? So he walks back onto the bridge and tells Riker to take over indefinitely. So he accepts command, and then Ro is relieved of duty as well. So she's in the corridor with Guinan, and Guinan's talking about how she wants to go play because she hasn't been a child in a very long time. Because Guinan, earlier in the teaser part of the episode, I think she mentions that her father is like 700 years old. So, Guinan's a old species, or they live long. And they tried to introduce a similar type species in Strange New Worlds, and with Carol King, or Carol, she was in Taxi Driver and Scrooged. And I usually love her in the roles that she does, but in that role they make her like the most annoying person ever. I'd say more annoying than Wesley. So Ro says she's going to her quarters, and Guinan tells her to not pout. And she says that she's not pouting, that she wants to go to her quarters and contemplate the situation. So they go their separate ways, and then Keiko is in her quarters with Miles, and she's watering plants and stuff like that, and Miles is just kind of sitting there, and it's like, that's got to be the most awkward thing, is your wife is now a 10-year-old or whatever, and she's like, asking Miles if their marriage is over, and he's like, no, but this is weird. And I can't imagine what the writers were thinking about, because obviously, because of the obvious, right? The pedophile aspect of it. I mean, like, he basically would have to wait like 10 more years before they can do anything. And then, of course, your marriage is not going to last. I mean, you're not going to stay married to a 10-year-old, if they can't reverse the effects, So Molly wants Keiko, she wants her mom to read her bedtime story. So Keiko goes in there, and she says, "You're not my mom," and Keiko walks away upset, and Miles just says that he'll read the story tonight. So Troy visits Picard, and Picard is like putting on his old jacket and stuff, and it doesn't fit him well. It doesn't fit him at all. And she's talking to him about what's he gonna do, because he can't be captain, right? And so she suggests, why don't you go do your archaeological stuff and do that? And he says, well, that's one thing, maybe I could take up the offer from the guy from before. uh I forget that name of that episode, but he he wants uh he wants Picard to join him on a archaeological expedition. And he thinks about it, but then and the guy gets killed. And I forget what else happens in that. uh is Vash involved in that? I don't remember, but it's a good episode. But then she suggests maybe you go back to Starfleet Academy and get another degree, or learn something else. And he says that that's an intriguing idea, but it's kind of like, you know it's kind of like regressing. And I mean, he even makes a joke that he would be roommates with Wesley. And then so then Crusher is talking to Riker about the situation. And when they did the transporter, forget that there's RVN patterns. So our DNA doesn't change, but there's like stuff within our DNA that changes humans from a child to puberty, and that was taken out when they did the transporter. And then Geordi visits Chief O'Brien in the cargo bay, where they're analyzing the pieces from the shuttle. And Geordi, with his visor, notices that there's a piece of the shuttle that's like titanium, and but it had like broken up and was like very weak, you know, or tritanium, or whatever they use. And that, so they kind of put the puzzles together, like how, okay, they can reverse the issue by using the transporters, but they're also worried that if it doesn't work, they may get younger, and turn into babies or whatever. And so Guinan is in Rose's quarters, and Ro is just kind of sulking, and she's not happy about this situation because she had a bad childhood. She grew up in the camps with the Cardassians and stuff under the occupation, and never really had a bed. And Guinan's like, well, sometimes you did, and I bet you were a jumper. And she starts talking about jumping on the bed, like little kids do. And she starts jumping on the bed and taunts Ro, and Ro finally breaks and gets up and starts jumping on the bed, and they're giggling and stuff. So then two Klingon ships decloak. Well, they're at the planet where they're supposed to be, and two Klingon ships decloak and start firing on the Enterprise, and takes out their warp engines, takes out their shields, and they're basically sitting ducks. And some Ferengis board the ship, and they start beaming like the adults off of the ship, able-bodied adults off of the ship and onto the planet's surface. And they take over the bridge, and they're keeping all the children on the ship, like basically in one spot. And so Picard is trying to access the computer, but they're in a classroom and they can't access the type of schematics that they want to access. So Guinan says it's a children's computer, so she asks the computer to bring up like a drawing or a diagram or whatever of the ship, and it's the best they can do. And Picard points out that they're here and they need to go through this corridor, through these Jeffrey tubes, and then through a corridor to get access to like I guess the bridge or the engine room or something. And so they open the Jeffries tube, and Ro climbs in with Guinan, and Keiko goes next, and then Picard is about to go, and this like toy remote car hits him, and he looks around, and it's Alexander. So he asks Alexander if he can borrow the toy. So they take it and use it in the corridors where the Ferengis are guarding different places, and kind of use it as a distraction. So the toy car would go by, and then the Ferengis would chase after it, and then they go down the corridor, wherever they need to go. And they grab Keiko. They go to the transporter room. Keiko grabs some phasers. Alexander sneaks in, uses the toy to distract him at the sick bay to grab some hyper sprays. And then they need to get to the bridge, and there's only one way to get to the bridge. Picard goes up to one of the Ferengis and starts demanding to see his father, and starts acting like a kid, like a brat, So the guy gives in, takes him to Riker, and Picard hugs him and says, "Daddy, father, So they're sitting down, and they talk in code, because Picard tells them that there's nothing they can do. They can't play any games on the computer. And he says that can you see if the Ferengi would turn on the computer so we can play games? And he tells them what room they're in. And at the end he says, "Thanks, number one." And then they look over and he says, "Oh, he's my number one father." So Riker walks in to the daemon, that's the term they use for a captain, like Ducat or Gull is the Cardassian term for captain. So the Ferengi daemon, and he threatens him, the Ferengi guy threatens him. He says, "If you don't allow me access to your computer, I'm going to start killing people, and I'm going to start with your kid." So he agrees, and he tells him this is the computer, and he starts making up a bunch of nonsense to kind of trick the Ferengi, because they're not exactly the smartest people sometimes. And while he's doing one thing with one hand, he gives access to Picard on the other hand. So they get access to the computer, and they can use the transporters, and they start transporting all of the Ferengi to one transporter room where they create a force field. And then so they beam them all to that place, and then Picard walks in with a phaser and points it at the Ferengi. He says, "I believe you have my seat." And then they go to the transporter room, and Picard beams first, and he's back to his old self, except he doesn't have hair. And then Guinan and Keiko, and then Rose, the last one, she's drawing a picture of her mom. She's still a kid, and she says to Guinan that when she was a kid, she never drew any pictures of her mom. And Guinan says, "Well, that's what crayons are for." And Rose says that I guess it's my turn, and Guinan tells her that the transporters will still be there, if you want to take your time. And she sits down and joins her. So this episode, it's okay. It's kind of goofy. I gave it like I said yesterday. About a 6.5 maybe. I thought they did a good job with the actors, the young kids. I think the one kid that plays Picard might have played Picard's nephew. They look similar, but I thought they did a good job with that. The casting, the young Ro looks a lot like Michelle Forbes, and Keiko. They all did pretty good, I thought. So I don't have much to really say other than that about that episode. It's okay. It's not one that I would purposely seek out to say I haven't seen that episode in a long time. I'm gonna watch it. But if it's on, I'm not gonna be like, fuck this shit, I'm turning it. It's not like if, say, Voyager Threshold is on, I'm probably gonna go to something else. So it looks like there's a couple people, or at least one person out in the chat. But my computer is slow right now. There we go. Come on. Okay, so we have Gavin Blackburn. The Miles the Miles and Keiko situation was icky. Yeah, that was the first thing that I thought. I was like, wow, how fucked up is that? That was the chase where they discover all of the races. Or yes, the chase. Yeah, right. And then they brought it back in Discovery, the last season, I think, where they brought back those. That was like their last mystery box. The Galen was the guy. He gave Picard the priceless artifact and which he tossed aside during Generations, right? Like, as if he would do that, right? And then this is the definition of a so-so novelty episode. Great when you got 26. Yeah. Yeah, you can do that when you have 26 episodes per season, but when you only have 10, you don't want to do gimmicky bullshit like they did with Strange New Worlds. Uh, they did what, three gimmicky. They had the Vulcan. They had the Vulcan one where everybody turns Vulcan. What was the other one? They had the Q one, or Trelane or whatever, which is okay. The Vulcan one was horrible. And then there was one other one, I can't remember. And then last season you had the one season where they had Spock turn human, Spork, as Admiral Teague calls him, because he ate bacon in that episode. And then you had the K-pop, Klingons, the musical one. And I see that the title on my video is all messed up. There's a semicolon and a colon, and Rascals is lowercase. And I still haven't fixed the number of episodes. So I have to fix all that. I was in a rush. So I had everything ready, and then at the last minute forgot that I hadn't written the title out. Everything else was ready. But anyway, we get to the portion of the night where fate chooses the next episode that I review, and that will be on next Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. So as you can see, it's still on TNG, Rascals. So I didn't screw things up. I'm doing good past couple weeks. I haven't screwed it up. Randomize again. Let's see what we get. Voyager Season 7, Episode 2, Imperfection. Season 7. Don't know that episode right off the top of my head, but it sounds like a 7 centered episode. So I don't know. We I guess we're gonna find out, won't we? But yeah, I mean, lately I haven't had much to say about the episodes that I've been reviewing because there hasn't been much to them. I had a little more to say about Naked Time, just because it is a classic one, but it's it's okay. I mean, better than this one. But it's sort of a gimmicky. Oh, the crew's drunk. What happens when the crew's drunk? But at the time, it was probably kind of interesting to see. If I had more to say, I mean, there's been other episodes where I had a lot to say, because it reminded me of something or whatever, put a thought in my head or whatever. So, 7 in Echeb. That's what I thought. Usually, if it's season 7, it's 7 in something, and Imperfections, it's I don't know if that's the one where 7 gets on his ass for not doing his proper fucking but that's like the bore. She's always talking about being insufficient or you know whatever, and or more sufficient. I can't think of the word. My brain's not working properly. But I want to thank Gavin Blackburn, and I like Icheb. I don't like what they did to him in Picard, but I like Icheb. Uh, they aren't gonna make a an episode about Janeway called Imperfection. No, no. She always, um, she always did the right thing. No, she didn't. But you know, that's up to the viewer to decide. Anyway, I want to thank Gavin Blackburn for hanging out tonight. And anybody that's out there lurking, and anybody that watches this in the future. Again, I'm the Dead Man. This is the Red Hour. I'm going to try to fix that title and the numbers. Uh, uh, and I'll just hopefully see you again on Wednesday. Have a good night.